Hi Mike, good to see you.
Likewise. How's it going?
Yeah, good. We don't do this enough in Sydney, so we had to fly all this way to San Francisco, right?
That's the easiest way to do it. Yeah, it's the right place, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Awesome. Well, I've got a couple of questions. You now work for Snowplow.
I do work for Snowplow.
It's been a while, actually.
It's been 18 months.
18 months.
Yeah, so a little while, settling in.
So, for those that don't know, describe what Snowplow is in a nutshell.
So, Snowplow is a customer data infrastructure platform. So we started as kind of this open source company, really focusing on behavioural analytics. So, collection from websites, mobile applications, any kind of really online device, capturing customer behaviour, firing into a pipeline. So AWS, GCP, Azure, you run all the infrastructure in your account. So we have all this kind of governance that allows you to have lots of control over that data, and then typically sync it into a data warehouse or a database or something like that. So Snowflake, where we're here today, is one of those big data warehouses for us, both natively into Snowflake, using either streaming or micro batching, so Snowpipe, but also increasingly via Iceberg now as well for people looking more at the data lake side of things.
Why is it important to capture behavioral data?
Oh man, it's a big, it's such a hard, so a lot of people focus on demographic data when they're kind of capturing and analyzing data. So things like age, maybe gender, like where someone lives. And I think that gives you kind of a rough sketch of someone. It gives you sort of a two-dimensional sort of caricature in a way. Fundamentally, I think behavioral data is so important and interesting because it allows you to describe at an individual level, but also at an aggregate level, like what someone is doing and start to understand like why they're going and doing that thing. Which is, if you kind of boil everything down to like even the interactions we're having, like everything is about behavior, right? If we were having a conversation, all I knew was your demographic information and you only knew my demographic information, like we wouldn't really be able to have a conversation. But like here we are talking, interacting, and we're looking at each other's behavior and having a conversation around that. So for businesses to be able to do that is like critically important. So demographic, behavioral data, transactional data, all that sort of stuff. Otherwise you can't really have a conversation with someone.
Yeah, I guess, like there's a lot of product analytics use cases and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so what are some of the use cases for Snowplow data?
So there's a huge number. So personalization is a really big one at the moment. So customer 360 sort of things that people are interested in. So trying to figure out what your customer is doing, particularly in an omni-channel environment. So a lot of the time we talk about web and mobile, but it's equally sort of offline as well. So in-store via loyalty cards or loyalty programs. So personalization is a big one. Things like next best offer, figuring out how to discount things, projecting customers into the future as well. So things like lifetime value, how much to spend on a customer. Attribution is still a big one as well, which has been big for, I guess, the last sort of 20 years. So figuring out how someone lands on those channels, how you attribute spend and optimize that spend. And then increasingly now, AI and putting AI on top of customer data. So behavioral data, but also data that's come in through, surveys, transactions, other mechanisms as well.
Sounds amazing. And you mentioned it before, but how are customers typically deploying Snowplow? Is it self-managed or SaaS, or what are you seeing?
All of the above. So there's a bit that's self-managed through our kind of source available version of the pipeline. So that's typically kind of via Terraform into AWS, GCP, Azure. There is our kind of SaaS, our entry-level kind of SaaS offering, which is if you don't really want to run the infrastructure, we'll go and run the infrastructure for you, typically in AWS, but we can also pick a cloud there. And then finally, there's our kind of BDP deployment model, where we'll deploy it into your account of choice. We'll do all the hard parts in terms of managing infrastructure, but all of it sits primarily in your account. So we've got those kind of three main models, but primarily our focus is on that enterprise BDP notion, which is all the governance, all the infrastructure in your account.
Sounds amazing. And what are some of the things you should consider when designing your own behavioral analytics events?
It's a fantastic question. So in Snowplow, we do something quite differently in terms of a lot of other software will have this event model. So you define properties in the event and you'll send them all in one kind of big, typically a JSON event or something like that. Snowplow uses this event entity model where effectively you have these objects, these nouns. So product, cart, user, organization, video, something like that, and you reuse these entities across those events. So from a governance perspective, you define once, you have this reusability, but it's this nice level of abstraction. So maybe you're not going to use those entities on every single event, but rather than having to define that multiple times across 30 events, 50 events, 100 events, you define the events and then attach the entities to them. So I'd say for people looking at doing that level of modeling, which makes sense, right? If you're doing entity modeling in your warehouse, you should probably be doing entity modeling in your events as well.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So data modeling is still very much important thing to look at up front, right?
Yeah.
So finally, okay, so we're at Snowflake Summit, lots of massive announcements. Snowplow, any massive announcements?
Yeah. So I guess our kind of biggest announcement is more of a focus around AI. So we've always kind of positioned ourselves as a company that's kind of AI data ready and AI data aware. And one of those big reasons is that we practice and enforce a lot of validation in the warehouse. So rather than people spending time cleaning up data in the warehouse, checking that, I don't have all these null values, or that all of a sudden I'm expecting a number between 1 and 10 and I'm getting 50, we do that very upfront. So we do that kind of in a very early layer in enrichment process, sync it into the warehouse. So the data's ready to basically use. You don't have to do a huge amount of cleaning. Now where we're pushing is, once it's in the warehouse, how do you do more AI on top of it? So a lot of that's around things like propensity to convert, segmentation, cohort analysis, and increasingly LLMs on top of that data as well. Awesome. So something that we're launching this week in partnership with Snowflake is an LLM powered by Cortex and also in Streamlit that allows you to inspect and interrogate your data in Snowflake. And it's been trained in such a way that it understands not just the raw data that's in your warehouse, but also the data models on top of that as well. So we're really excited about that because it effectively unlocks more Snowflake data to stakeholders that don't necessarily know SQL, but can still go and use a lot of that information.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, thanks so much for joining us. We've had a lot of traffic at the conference, but really great chatting with you, Mike, as always. Thank you.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Cheers. Bye.
Pleasure.